Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, I will be showing you guys how to make and maintain a prayer journal. Now, if you don't know what prayer journaling is, it's basically like normal journaling mixed with praying, where like you write out your prayers and like your thoughts and what's going on in your life as if you're praying to God, like as you would out loud or in your head, but instead you're just doing it on paper, typically in like a specific book that's meant for your prayers to all just kind of be housed and held together. I started prayer journaling whenever I was a junior in high school, actually, and it was like the best decision I had ever made when it came to my prayer life, because I get really distracted whenever I pray in my mind. Like if I'm doing other things or like sitting around the house or about to fall asleep, I'll like fall asleep, or I'll start thinking of other things and not even realize that I didn't finish my prayer. Or if I'm doing it out loud, I only have opportunity to do that whenever I'm like in the car by myself and I can like don't have to worry about other people hearing me like talk through the walls or anything like that, and that like 12 a.m. being like, Rihanna, are you okay? But if I do it on the journal, then I can technically feel like I'm doing it out loud, and I can keep a train of thought, as well as also I can look back on it and remember what I have prayed about and when I prayed about those things. And I also really appreciate journaling and think that it works so well because there is so much evidence that we have found in psychology that goes towards how much more relieving writing something out is as compared to typing it out or just thinking it. Like there is some, I'm pretty sure, don't quote me on this, but I feel like it's because it activates more areas of your brain, like you're activating like the motor cortex to do the motor instances, and you're activating the language, and you're activating the visual all at once. That may not be the exact scientific thing. Please do not get upset at me, but I'm pretty sure that's what I learned in physio psych. So that's just one of the things where it's like when you write something out, that's why they say journaling is so good for you, because it's like you're getting it out there and you're activating more areas of your brain. So it's like you're flexing a bigger muscle. So then whenever you flex something really hard and you release it, you feel more relaxed than as if you were just like flexing like one muscle as compared to like a bunch of them. So since your brain is a form of like a muscle, it's like feels more relieving, and it makes your brain less stressed if you activate more areas by doing something like journaling or speaking out loud if you have the opportunity to, but journaling does activate that motor cortex area. So there's that. But when I first started prayer journaling, I had no idea what I was doing. I just kind of like found like an old notebook thing, and there was like half math homework in here, half prayers, half to-do list. Like I did not know how to prayer journal. I was kind of awkward in figuring it out. But then once I did this, my mom finally got me one of these, which at first I was like, I don't need a specific prayer journal. Like I didn't want someone to like for some reason go in and find my journal and read all my thoughts and prayers. But I figured if I kept it in a more inconspicuous kind of notebook, people wouldn't think to read it. That was just insecurity. But this thing, I loved this one over the years just because it had Bible verses at the bottom of the pages. So if you are going to do a prayer journal, I would suggest doing something like this, because for me personally, it was so crazy how like with every prayer that I would do, every time I finished the page or moved on to the next page, the verse at the bottom of the page somehow correlated exactly with what I was going through. Like the Holy Spirit was just so evident in this, and I definitely filled this thing up very much so. Then I moved on to this one, and it didn't have the verses, which was a little bit sad, but it had more space so I could write more, which I needed, and I've gone through that one. So now I have this one from Rifle Paper Company, and it's like the prettiest journal ever. But I started it as a prayer journal when I was in Israel. So like the first 10 entries are Israel's day, like Israel trips, day 1 through 10, and it's really cool to look back at that. And that's what I love the most about prayer journals, especially if you put the date on them of whenever you go and you do your entries, is that you can look back and like remember what you were going through, remember what season of life you were, as well as remember like what God did, and look back and be like, oh, like he like answered this prayer here, or that's totally different situation now, or I don't have those kinds of anxieties anymore. And it's just really cool to see God's faithfulness in that. So I really would highly suggest just having a prayer journal yourself, whether you're a man or a woman. Men can write too. Don't be afraid of that. Just look at Paul. That's literally all he ever did, was basically prayer journal all the time, and then somehow people published it, and now it's the Bible. But this is just what I think is really, really cool and helpful in Christian walks to really just like nail down your prayer journal. But now I'm going to get into showing you guys how to actually go about prayer journaling. Now, there's no technically wrong way to prayer journal, but the two most popular and useful routes that I would say that people can go is either bullet pointing or brain dumping. So whenever you did bullet points, you would do like a certain emotion, or you could even do a certain prayer request or a certain problem or a certain season or situation you're in, or even like a praise that you have, or just something that you're thankful for, or just some sort of verse that you really love, because I love including verses in my prayer journals as well as like lines to worship music. So I listen to worship music while I pray, and if a line really sticks out to me, then I'll like do little like, what's that called? You know what I'm saying? Quotation marks. I don't know why I forgot that. But quotation marks, and then do that line of the song that really stuck out to me, and then I love reading back over it because then I can remember the worship song associated with whatever God was speaking to me during that point, also with the prayer. So it's multifaceted, but you could do the bullet pointing where you either just do like bullet point anxiety and then talk about what that actually means, or you can do bullet point like school problems, or bullet point I finally got to do this today and I didn't cry, or something like that, whatever that is. And that is one way to do it. The way I prefer to do it is brain dumping, mainly because that's the story of my life when it comes to every conversation that I have with a human, is just like constant brain dumping. But I do that also whenever I talk to God because it feels more natural to me. Like it feels like it's like a conversation, and that's what he wants, is a conversation. It's supposed to feel like a relationship and not just some sort of thing where you're like, "Dear Lord and my Heavenly Father, please help me with this." Like if that's what you kind of like roll with, fine. But if you don't usually talk to people like that, and you're really trying to work hard on getting your relationship with Christ to feel more like a relationship and less like a religion, then I would suggest going to God and talking to God in the same way that you would feel like you would talk to like a mom or a dad or a best friend whenever it comes to like just like telling them about your problems, your insecurities, your praises, your celebrations, all of those things. So I do that whenever I talk to God just because I feel like I like talking to him that way. But I will just go ahead and be like, "God, I'm freaking out right now, my homie." And I just kind of just like dive in, which is why most of my prayers are like 4 million years long. But you could choose either of those routes that you would like, and just go ahead and get any sort of pen that you would like, or pencil, whatever you're into. But just remember that writing is always much better than typing, so you could use something on your phone, but it's really psychologically not going to work as well as some sort of journal that you can physically write with. But I would take your journal, put your date on it up at the top of wherever you're going to start. You can even start like halfway through the page if your last prayer like ended like right about there. You could start there. But do the date, and then just really start talking to God and what's going on. And then if he like brings any sort of verses to you, or if you have like been in the Word and he reminds you of certain verses that you remember, write those down as well in your prayer journal somewhere. Also with the worship music idea that I have, I think that just really makes it seem more intentional and complete, in that like you, instead of just like talking to God and then you look back and you're like, what was going on in that moment kind of thing. If you have like the Bible verses, and if you have the worship music going, and if you really start like really speaking to God and telling him everything that crosses through your mind, then you really start to get a full picture of your prayer life and your prayer journals, and you can look back at it, and it really invokes a lot of crazy emotions because it brings you back to that moment whenever you were really just like wondering like, I was in this state of mind and now I'm not. But I can look back on that and know that that was totally God. And I didn't change out of that state of mind until I brought it to God and asked for it in prayer, or surrendered it to him in prayer. Like, you don't see those types of changes occur until you pray about them, which makes it even more fun to look back on and praise whenever you have them recorded in paper form. Honestly, the hardest part about prayer journaling is starting, and I'm usually not the best whenever it comes to keeping up with it, because I will always choose to like just pray in my head or in the car or read a book or do a devotional or worship or something over prioritizing the time to sit down and do a prayer journal. Because whenever I think about it, it's just like, that sounds so tedious. I don't have that kind of time, blah, 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 blah. I can just pray in my head. But let me tell you, There is so much power when it comes to intentionally sitting down and blocking out your time and talking to God in an undistracted manner. Like, you can be a mom, you can be a working person, you can be a dad, you can be a student, and you can still find time to do this. It's your priorities. If it's in your priorities, you'll make time to actually get it done. And if it's not in your priorities, probably not going to get it done. So it just kind of comes down to reassessing your priorities. That's what I've learned in my life, is I can't make excuses like that anymore, because I'll spend 10 minutes on Facebook watching videos about literally anything that's like, I won't remember later. But I won't spend 10 minutes actually prayer journaling, whenever I could actually go to bed feeling better if I would have just taken this time to do this, or start my day feeling better if whenever I show up to class kind of early and I'm still sitting in my car, I can jot down a little bit before walking in. And so I would just really highly suggest doing it as a Christian, just because it really enlivens your walk and helps you be more intentional about what you pray for, as well as be more thoughtful and articulate about what you pray for and how you pray. And sometimes I'll be like praying, but like writing, and I'll see the way I word things, and I'm like, whoa, like now that I'm looking at that on paper, like that's kind of negative, or like, where is my faith in God in any of this? Or wow, like I'm really stuck in that mindset, and I just prayed for that exact same thing like 4 prayers ago, and God has given me the power to overcome it, but I'm the one that's still stuck here living in that same verbatim of speaking that way over myself and thinking that way over myself, whenever I could just have the power to change it if I just changed the way I worded it, changed the way I thought about it and spoke about it. And so a lot of conviction comes from this as well. It comes from prayer journaling, whenever you can just look back and say like, okay, there is power in my words, not just in my head, but also in what I write out. But sometimes you don't realize it until you write it out, and you can look at it and be like, oh, that problem's really not as bad now that I say it out loud. Or, oh, that was pretty negative of me, and where is my joy in all of this? Like, the joy of the Lord is my strength, but I'm not here having any joy of the Lord or strength, and that's a me problem, not accessing what God has already promised me, and not a God problem. So it really is something that snaps me back into reality, helps me readjust and put my emotions in their place and where they're supposed to be as a passenger and not a driver of my life. And so I would just really highly suggest starting one. It's so hard to just kind of pick it up and start it, but if you make yourself do it, you'll probably find that it's going to be hard to actually put down the journal. So the best advice I can give you is just to make yourself sit down and to make yourself start, because it really helps you be more intentional with your prayers. And it doesn't matter if it's a nice pretty book or if it's just like a legal notepad. It really, God doesn't care as long as you're talking to him. But I want to talk to my God well. I want to talk to my God intentionally, and I want to not just like blow him off in conversation and be okay with just forgetting that I was praying and falling asleep. I just want to honor God in that way, and it honestly makes you feel so much better. It's psychologically proven that journaling makes you feel better, and prayer, as we know, spiritually makes you feel better. So it's just like a beautiful combo of like literally nothing can go wrong, and it will do no harm if you prayer journal. So I really hope that you guys find that this encourages you to make you want to either start a prayer journal or pick up the prayer journal that you may have attempted to start before but have yet to make the time again to sit back down and do. But it has changed my prayer life, and it makes a spiritual difference in how I go about my day or even my week whenever I actually make the time to sit down and prayer journal. So I know it'll do nothing but good for your guys' spiritual lives and prayer lives as well. So if you're looking or craving to change and mature your prayer life, this is one way that is really beneficial whenever it comes to doing that and keeping yourself focused on it, as well as learning to look back and see the blessings and the answered prayers that God has done in your life. But that is all for today's video, my friends. If you haven't already, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. I will see you guys next week for my next video.